This is where the illusion ends. This is where hype gets tested under unforgiving lights, where social media favorites collide with reality, and where only one thing matters: who actually shows up at their absolute peak. We're talking about three names that are dominating the conversation right now: Andrew Jacked, Hadi Choopan, and Derek Lunsford. But here's the uncomfortable truth: they are not equal. Not in conditioning, not in structure, and definitely not in how dangerous they actually are on stage. Let's start with Andrew Jacked, because this is where the internet starts getting emotional. Andrew is the definition of a genetic phenomenon. Wide clavicles, a tiny waist, full muscle bellies that pop without effort. From a distance, he looks like he was built in a lab to dominate bodybuilding. And that's exactly why people overrate him. Because what people are judging is not what he brings, but what they believe he could bring. And those are two very different things. When you strip away the hype and look closely, the cracks begin to show. His conditioning, while improved, still doesn't reach that elite, grainy, skin-tearing level that wins against the absolute best. His quads, while massive, don't carry that deep feathered separation. His glutes, which are one of the most decisive factors in modern judging, still lack that consistently shredded, striated look that screams undeniable. And his back, while structurally beautiful, doesn't yet have the dense, chaotic detail that separates great physiques from championship-winning ones. This is the part nobody wants to say out loud. Andrew Jacked is being judged on potential, not execution. He looks incredible, but bodybuilding is not about looking incredible. It's about being complete. And right now, he is not the most conditioned, not the most detailed, and not the most dangerous man in this lineup. He is the future, yes, but the future doesn't win today. And until he brings a level of conditioning that matches his structure, he will continue to fall just short when it matters most. Now, when we shift to Hadi Choopan, the tone changes completely. Because with Hadi, there is no guessing, there is no maybe, there is no what if. What you see is what you get, and what you get is absolute brutality. Hadi doesn't step on stage to impress. He steps on stage to dominate through conditioning. His physique is carved, not built. The skin looks paper thin. The muscle fibers look alive. And every pose reveals detail that most competitors simply cannot match. This is not just conditioning. This is obsession turned into physical form. When Hadi hits a pose, it doesn't look smooth or pretty. It looks violent. Every muscle is pushing against the skin. Every angle is finished. Every shot looks like it was sharpened to perfection. And that level of consistency is what makes him one of the most dangerous competitors in the sport. He does not miss. He does not gamble. He shows up ready every single time. And for years, that has been enough to put him at the very top. But here's where the conversation becomes uncomfortable again. Because bodybuilding is evolving. It is no longer just about who is the hardest or the most shredded. It is about who presents the most complete package. And this is where Hadi begins to face limitations. His structure, while incredibly powerful, is compact. His lines are aggressive, but not as flowing as taller, more open physiques. His silhouette is dominant, but not necessarily overwhelming when placed next to someone with superior shape and width. And when the margins are this close, those differences start to matter more than ever. Hadi can outcondition almost anyone, but he cannot outstructure everyone. And that is the shift happening right now in bodybuilding. Because if someone can come in close to his level of conditioning, while surpassing him in shape, flow, and overall presence, then suddenly the advantage starts to disappear. Hadi remains one of the most dangerous competitors on any stage. But this might be the moment where conditioning alone is no longer enough to secure the win. And that brings us to Derek Lunsford, the name that is quietly becoming the most serious threat in this entire lineup. Because Derek is not just improving, he is evolving into something far more dangerous. He is combining elements that rarely come together at this level: size, shape, structure, and increasingly, conditioning. And that combination is what changes everything. Derek has filled out his frame in a way that allows him to stand next to anyone without looking outsized. His structure is one of his biggest weapons: wide shoulders, a tight waist, balanced proportions that create a flowing, aesthetic look from every angle. His muscle bellies are round, his transitions are smooth, and his overall presentation is polished and controlled. But the real story is not his size or his shape. It's his conditioning improvements. For years, the question was simple: can Derek match the hardness of someone like Hadi? And now, the question is shifting. Because he doesn't need to match it, he only needs to get close. And if he gets close, everything else begins to outweigh that small gap. His structure becomes more noticeable. His flow becomes more dominant. His overall presence becomes harder to ignore. And suddenly, you are not comparing conditioning anymore. You are comparing complete physics. That is where Derek becomes extremely dangerous, because he is not relying on one strength. He is not just the biggest, not just the hardest, not just the most aesthetic. He is becoming the most complete. And in modern bodybuilding judging, that is often what separates a winner from everyone else. So when you step back and look at this lineup without bias, without hype, and without emotion, the picture becomes clearer. Andrew Jacked is a future champion, but not yet a finished product. Hadi Choopan is still one of the most conditioned athletes in the world, but may be facing a shift in what judges prioritize. And Derek Lunsford is emerging as the perfect balance between all the elements that matter. And this is where the real tension lies. Because if Derek comes in fully dialed, even slightly below Hadi's conditioning but superior in structure and flow, the decision becomes very difficult to argue against. But if he misses, even by a small margin, Hadi's conditioning could once again overpower the lineup. And Andrew, despite his incredible potential, may still find himself watching from just behind, waiting for the moment when his conditioning finally matches his genetics. And this is where things get even more uncomfortable. Because most people watching bodybuilding are not actually watching bodybuilding. They're watching highlights. They're watching poses in isolation. They're watching physics, one at a time. But that's not how shows are won. Shows are won in comparisons. Side by side, pose for pose, second by second. And this is exactly where everything changes. Let's go back to Andrew Jacked for a moment. Because this is where reality hits the hardest. When Andrew stands alone, the illusion is powerful. The structure pulls you in immediately. Wide shoulders, narrow waist, clean lines. It looks effortless, almost too perfect. But the second he stands next to athletes who bring extreme conditioning, that illusion starts to crack. The roundness is still there. The shape is still elite. But the lack of deep separation becomes visible in a way it never does in solo shots. And this is where judging becomes brutal. Now shift your focus again to Hadi Choopan. Because this is where things become almost unfair. When Hadi steps into comparisons, he doesn't just compete, he exposes. Every athlete next to him suddenly looks smoother. Not bad, just smoother. And in bodybuilding, smoother is a silent loss. It's not obvious to casual fans, but to judges, it's everything. And Derek doesn't fight Hadi's battle, he changes it. This is what most people don't understand. Derek is not trying to outcondition Hadi. He is trying to outpresent him. And that is a completely different strategy. When Derek stands in a lineup, your eye doesn't get stuck in one place. It moves. It flows from shoulders to waist, from quads to chest, from back width to detail. His physique guides your attention. It controls what you see and how you see it. That is not an accident. That is structure. In the end, this is not about who looks the most impressive in isolation. It's about who leaves no questions when they stand next to each other. Because on that stage, under those lights, potential means nothing, hype means nothing, and opinions mean nothing. There is only one thing that matters: who is undeniable.